Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to the realms of a cursed city. In this episode, we'll be taking care of the 4 little pests contained in the Cursed City box set. Now, I have no idea what role they fulfill, as even the glossar mentions them under miscellaneous. But I think this could be a nice opportunity to test out an idea I had on how to approach stone differently than usual. So, let's get going! Starting with the Diregoiles, we give both of them a coat of olive green. You know how old stones often have some green on them? I wanted to see if we can get this effect putting down the green first, and then avoiding the recesses with mostly dry and overbrushing. Theoretically speaking, the green should be nicely visible in the recesses once the mini is finished. Be quick with your brush and don't think about being neat here. If the paint is a little bit too thin in some areas, don't worry about it, as we mainly aim to fill the recesses here. As we leave the Diregoiles to dry, we can take a dark, blue-tinted grey and quickly paint the fur of the strays. After the green paint is fully dry, we can move on to the stone colors themselves. For one goyle I chose a very dark grey, and for the other one I chose a dark beige, as I wanted to resemble sandstone again, just as with the stone pillars from last time. In this step, we don't layer the paint like usual, but rather use a technique called overbrushing, which is basically a wet dry brush. Get a bit of paint on your brush, and just swipe it over the model, avoiding the recesses. It looks quite messy now, but that's just how we want it, so no worries. Next, we take accordingly brighter paints and a smaller brush to roughly pick out all of the clearly defined raised parts, like the individual muscles on arms and legs, the upper part of their backs, and so on. Just don't paint the model as a whole, and stay with a few drops on its features here and there. Oh god, just keep going and trust in the process. Okay, now the models have a good definition, but they are lacking any kind of texture. So, we take even brighter paints, or mix a few drops of white into the paints we last used, and start dry brushing the models. As these minis are very small, take only a little bit of paint on your brush to not accidentally cover whole sections of the mini in one single sweep. Because of this, we will need to quite often reload the brush with paint, which is why the step can take a surprisingly large amount of time. We are almost done with the Direcoids themselves. In the last step, we want to give them some extra highlights on their most raised parts. For the stone Diregoyle, I took a pure white paint and dry brushed it on the parts with a lot of attention, like his facial features, his hands, and his back. The sandstone goyle got the same treatment, using a light grey paint. Okay! Now we can turn our attention to his treasure. For the chests, we start off with the wood. Be careful when doing this and try to avoid the goyle's skin as best you can. Taking our true metallic metals, we pick the tarnish of the chests out with a dark iron paint, and the coin he's chewing on with a bright gold. Last but not least, I painted their eyes in a mischievously glowing red. Alright, nice! The Diregoiles are basically done and we can move on with the zombie raccoons. Having the base coat already done, we pick a lighter grey with a little more blue in it and give the whole thing a quick dry brush. After that, we do a second dry brush using a light grey to really give the fur the well-needed definition. Having the fur done, we pick a dark beige and turn our attention to all of the visible bones, like their skull, their spine and ribs, etc. Also, don't forget the little bone visible on its left front leg. Good! Now we take a brighter beige and give the bones some highlights to get some more definition and depth going. After that, we paint the eye the same way as with the Diregoiles and pick out the fangs with a light grey. We are now done with all 4 base coats, and you know what that means. get your washes out and quickly cover your minis with it. For the stone Diregoyle, I used a black wash, as well as for the Gnawbone strays. But if you want to mix it up a bit, you can wash one of the strays black and the other one brown. Either way, I would recommend to use a brown wash for the bones, as well as for the Sandstone Diregoyle. As it notoriously takes quite a while for washes to dry, we can use the time to paint up the bases. As always, we start by laying the foundation using the texture paint Stirland Mud. After that, we catch all of the grains of sand by dry brushing a dark beige over it, and finish them off by dabbing a bit of dark mustard yellow onto the base. Now we just need to paint the black trims, and we are done with the speed paint. The Direcoids as well as the Gnawbone strays are now fully painted up to a table ready standard in no time. I'm quite content with the outcome, even though starting off with a green base coat on the goils didn't really result in the desired effect. I definitely need to do more testing on that, but otherwise, I really like these little idiots, especially their dry brushed stone texture. If you have just a little bit more time, I welcome you to stay just a few more minutes, where I showcase how you can very easily elevate this paint job with not even a handful of steps to follow. The first thing we just gotta do is to give the zombie cats some more gore. Using a red wash, we paint the bones close to the broken fur, to make it look like stains of dried blood still sticking to the bones. Alternatively, you can use Citadel's Blood for the Blood God, if you'd like the blood to look a little more fresh and thick. Either way, both methods will result in the same awesome gore effect. After that, I picked a very bright beige to pick out the bony details on the spine, as well as on the skull, and then took a light grey to accentuate all the single strands of hair on the stray's fur. Moving on to the Direcoids, we can do basically the same thing, catching important details like facial features and the wings, just to make them look a little more interesting. If you feel up for it, you can take your fine detail brush and carefully paint some wooden texture onto the chests. Lastly, I took a bright silver to highlight the metal tarnish and called this paint job officially done. And there we go! 2 Direcoids and 2 Gnawbone strays ready to do whatever they gotta do in the cursed city of Ulthuan. They are just some small minis, too insignificant to be even properly mentioned in the rulebook's glossar, but hot damn did we make the most of it! If you're following me along on this series with your own miniatures at home, you will now have 22 of the 60 Cursed City models finished. I really hope you enjoyed this video and maybe even recommend it to a friend who might like it too. In case you would like to have a look at the exact paints I'm using, I have a guide down in the description of the video with all of the paints, names and techniques listed up. If you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, please be my guest and share your thoughts in the comment section. In the next episode, we're going to take care of the swarms of corpse rats, and if you would like to catch their paint job as well as the other upcoming Cursed City miniatures, feel free to hit the subscribe button. As I am very looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care.